I opened my eyes after 10 months drowning in the black void of a coma. The first words I heard were, "Thank God you're okay." They were my own son's voice saying, "I transferred your house to Jasmine's uncle. Didn't think you'd make it back, Pops." Those words crushed me like a building collapse. I tried processing what just came out of his mouth, while my vision adjusted to the brutal fluorescent hospital lights. My son, Terrell Mitchell, stood next to my bed with his arms locked tight across his chest, wearing an expression I'd never seen on his face before. His wife Jasmine stood beside him, watching me with the same ice-cold stare she'd always hidden behind fake smiles at family dinners. What did you just say?" My voice scratched out like gravel. 10 months of silence had turned my throat into sandpaper. "Your house, Pops?" Terrell repeated, steady as death. "Gave it to Uncle Ray. He needed somewhere to stay." "And you?" "Doctors said you probably weren't coming back." Had to be realistic about it. Before I keep going with my story, let me ask you something. If you connect with these real-life stories, the kind that make you think hard about family, loyalty, and what justice really means, help me hit 15,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. And if this story hits you where it counts, leave a like. Let's shoot for 300 likes on this one. Your support keeps me going and helps me share these experiences with more people. Now, let's get back to it. I tried sitting up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My muscles had wasted away to nothing after all those months. I could barely lift my head more than a few inches off that hospital pillow. Realistic. That word tasted like poison in my mouth. "Terrell, that house is mine. I built it with these hands. When you were still running around in diapers, every single brick was laid for you." Jasmine stepped forward, cutting me off. Her voice didn't carry 1 ounce of shame. "Papers are already signed, Deshawn. Transfer went through 4 months ago. Everything's legal and done." I stared at my son, searching for any trace of the boy I raised, the young man I worked double shifts to put through Northwestern University, the man I gave everything to. But that man wasn't standing there anymore. Some stranger wearing his face stared back at me. "How could you do this?" I whispered, feeling something inside me shatter in ways that coma never touched. I should have woken up in my own house. Should have been able to get my life back. "You need to face reality, Deshawn," Jasmine said, using my first name like we were business associates instead of family. "Doctors gave us zero hope. You were hooked to machines for 10 months straight. Bills were massive. Somebody had to make decisions. So you decided to steal my house," I said. Rage started waking up alongside my body. "It's not stealing when I'm your only heir." Terrell shot back with some twisted logic that left me speechless. "Just move the timeline up a bit. Uncle Ray needed help, and you weren't in any position to. I'm right here." I shouted with every bit of strength my weakened lungs could gather. "I'm alive." I woke up. The silence after that was heavy enough to crush bones. A nurse stuck her head through the door, looking worried. Jasmine waved her off like she was swatting a fly. "Yeah, you woke up," my daughter-in-law said with terrifying calmness. "Now we need to discuss what comes next. Uncle Ray's already living there. Made some improvements, changed things around. Wouldn't be fair kicking him out at this point. Wouldn't be fair?" I laughed. It was a bitter laugh that hurt my chest. "What about what's fair to me?" "Pops, you gotta understand," Terrell started. I cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. "Don't call me Pops. A son doesn't do this." Jasmine sighed like I was some stubborn child who couldn't grasp basic concepts. "Look, Deshawn, you can stay at a studio apartment we got on the west side. It's small, but I want my house back." "That's not possible anymore," Terrell said. "Legally, the house belongs to Uncle Ray now. Even if you tried fighting this in court, you don't have the resources." Your savings went toward medical bills insurance wouldn't touch. I felt like I was sinking back into that darkness. Everything I worked for, everything I built gone while I fought to stay alive. You need to leave the hospital in 3 days, Jasmine continued. No more coverage. We can pick you up and drive you to the studio, or you handle your own transportation. Your choice. I just stared at both of them. These strangers wearing faces I used to love. 10 months. 10 months was all it took for them to erase me from my own life. Get out, I said quietly. Pops, get out. My shout echoed through the room. I don't want to see either of you again. Terrell and Jasmine exchanged a glance. She just shrugged. Suit yourself, my son said. But think about it. Without our help, you got nowhere to go. I watched them walk out, their footsteps fading down that hospital corridor, taking the last pieces of the family I thought I had with them. But they didn't know. What nobody knew yet was that I wasn't the same man who fell into that coma 10 months back. Something changed during all that darkness. And when I finally walked out of that hospital, 4 days later, without saying a word, without asking for anything, I started down a path they never saw coming. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. To understand how I reached that moment, you need to know who I was before the coma. My name is Deshaun Mitchell. I'm 68 years old, though after 10 months flat on my back, my body felt more like 90. I was born on the south side of Chicago, where I learned young that hard work was the only inheritance worth having. When I was 23, I married LaToya. She taught 3rd grade at King Elementary, and I worked construction. We didn't have much except dreams and hands willing to work for them. Terrell came along 3 years later, and that boy became my whole reason for breathing. I built our house with my own hands, literally. Every weekend for 4 years, after working full weeks on other people's job sites, I spent my free hours building our home. Terrell was just a little guy then, but I remember him following me around the construction site, asking how to mix concrete and why the bricks had to go down a certain way. Someday this will be yours, I'd tell him while he handed me tools with his small hands. But right now, it belongs to the 3 of us. LaToya passed when Terrell was 16. Cancer came fast and cruel, stealing in 7 months what we'd built over 2 decades. After her funeral, I looked at my son and promised him over her grave that he'd never want for anything. I kept that promise. Worked double shifts to pay for Northwestern. Sold the Chevy Impala I'd worked years to afford just to cover his expenses when he decided to get his MBA at University of Chicago. Skipped meals so he could go out with friends. Every sacrifice seemed small compared to watching him succeed. Terrell graduated top of his class. Got a solid job at a tech company downtown. Married Jasmine 6 years ago in a wedding that nearly broke me financially. But I threw it with pride. She came from a family that used to run a construction business on the West Side before it went under right before the wedding. I never clicked with Jasmine. Something in the way she looked at me, like she was calculating my net worth. But she was my son's wife, so I swallowed my doubts and welcomed her into the family. A year ago, I started feeling off. Dizziness, confusion, headaches that wouldn't quit. Took doctors weeks to figure it out, a brain aneurysm. They operated emergency style one March afternoon after it ruptured while I was fixing the porch steps LaToya used to sit on. Surgery was successful, they told me later. But my brain needed time to heal. I slipped into a coma. Last thing I remember before the darkness was Terrell holding my hand in the ICU, tears streaming down his face telling me, "Hold on, Pops, I need you. Don't leave me alone." Those words stuck with me through 10 months of darkness. They were the only thing making me fight to come back. And when I finally opened my eyes, expecting to see relief and joy on my son's face, I got news that he'd given my house to strangers. The house I built for him. The house where his memories grew. The house where his mother died. Transferred, given away, handed over like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. While I lay in that hospital bed processing the size of this betrayal, a nurse came to check my vitals. She was an older woman with a kind face. Must have noticed something in my expression because she paused. "You all right, Mr. Mitchell?" I thought about her question. I wasn't all right. I'd woken from a coma to find I'd lost everything. But there was something they didn't know, something neither Terrell nor Jasmine considered. And that something was about to change everything. I left the hospital 4 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, with nothing but clothes. Terrell brought in a plastic bag and my wounded pride. Nobody came to pick me up. Physical therapist gave me strict instructions: walk some, rest more, take meds religiously. My body was still weak. My legs shook after just 60 yards. But I had something 10 months in a coma couldn't take from me my will. I took a cab to the neighborhood where I'd lived my entire adult life. Gave the driver my address, my own house's address, because I needed to see it with my own eyes. Needed to confirm what Terrell told me was real and not just another nightmare. When that cab pulled up front, I felt my heart break all over again. There was a brand new car in the driveway, an expensive Lexus SUV I could never have afforded. The garden I'd maintained so carefully was different. Latoya's heirloom rose bushes were gone. In their place was artificial turf and some ugly modern metal sculptures. The front door, that solid oak door I'd installed myself, was now aluminum and glass, white, cold, and soulless. "This it, sir?" the driver asked. I couldn't answer right away. Just nodded and paid him with the few dollars a nurse gave me from the hospital charity fund. I stood on that sidewalk staring at what used to be my home. A man in his 60s came out to water plants on the porch. He didn't recognize me. To him, I was just some old man staring at houses. "You looking for someone?" he asked suspiciously. This was my house," I said, voice barely above a whisper. The man frowned. "You must be confused, sir. This house is ours. We bought it months back." "Bought it?" The word hit me. "From who? How much did you pay?" "That's none of your business," he replied, more alert now. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." A woman came out behind him. Younger, sturdy looking. Jasmine's aunt, I figured. "Any problem, Ray?" "This man says this was his house." The man studied me with a mix of pity and discomfort. "You must be Deshawn," he finally said. "Terrell told us about you. I'm sorry about your situation, brother, but the papers are legit. Everything's legal." "Legal doesn't mean just," I managed to say, though my legs were starting to fail. "Look, sir," the woman said, her voice softening slightly. "I don't know what happened between you and your son, but we lost our business and our home. We were sleeping in our car. Terrell offered us this opportunity, and we took it. We paid for it. It wasn't free. How much?" I insisted. They looked at each other uncomfortably. "That's between us and Terrell," the man said. I didn't need them to tell me. From their faces, I knew it was pennies on the dollar. Terrell had done his in-laws a favor, and they'd been desperate or opportunistic enough to accept. "The roses," I said suddenly. "The roses that were there. My wife planted them before she died." "What did you do with them?" The woman went pale. We didn't know. They told us we could renovate however we wanted. We pulled them out because I didn't hear the rest." I turned and started walking, ignoring the pain in my legs, ignoring the man's shouts offering to call a cab, ignoring everything except the need to get away before I collapsed in front of strangers in what used to be my garden. I walked without direction for hours. My body begged me to stop, but my mind was somewhere else calculating, remembering. I ended up at the restaurant where LaToya and I used to have breakfast on Sundays. Big Lou, the owner, nearly dropped his spatula when he saw me walk through the door. Deshaun! Lord have mercy, Deshaun. He ran toward me, wrapping his massive arms around me. We thought Terrell said you probably wouldn't wake up. I woke up, I said simply, dropping into a booth before my legs gave out completely. Big Lou brought me coffee and a plate of biscuits and gravy without me asking. He sat across from me, his eyes full of tears and questions. Where you been? Why didn't you call? We went to the hospital, but Terrell said you were in a delicate state, couldn't have visitors. You went? Hope flickered in my chest. Who else? Everyone, Deshaun. The neighbors, folks from the community. We even organized a fundraiser to help with medical bills. Raised nearly $4,000 and gave it to Terrell to take to the hospital. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. 4,000? Yeah, I know it's not much, but Big Lou, did that money ever make it to the hospital? He blinked, confused. Terrell said it did. Said it helped a lot. Said you were real grateful. I closed my eyes. Another lie. Another betrayal. Deshaun, what's going on? Why would Terrell say you wouldn't wake up? Doctors who came in here said your prognosis was uncertain, but there was hope. I told him everything. Every word Terrell and Jasmine said in the hospital. The house, the uncle, the order to leave. Big Lou listened with growing horror. That's evil, he whispered when I finished. Your own blood? How could he? I don't know, I admitted. The Terrell I knew, the boy I raised, he never would have done this. But that Terrell doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe he never really did. You gotta report him. This can't be legal. Signing papers while you were unconscious. Terrell's legally my heir. Technically, he had the right to make decisions about my property if doctors certified I was incapacitated. And they did. I talked to the hospital social worker. Everything's technically legal. But morally, Big Lou slammed the table in frustration. Morality doesn't win legal battles, Lou. And I don't have money for lawyers. Terrell made sure of that. He looked at me for a long moment, then stood with determination. Wait here. He went upstairs to the apartment where he lived and came back with a key. I got a storage room in the basement. Used to keep old restaurant equipment, but I cleaned it out a while back. Got a cot, small bathroom. It ain't much, but, Lou, I can't. Yes, you can, and you will. His tone left no room for argument. Your family, Deshaun. More family than that ungrateful son of yours. You're staying here until we figure this out. That night, lying on a cot in a basement that smelled like grease and old spices, I stared at the cracked ceiling and finally let the tears flow. I'd lost my house, my money, my son. But as I lay there in the dark, I remembered something LaToya told me once when we lost everything in a bad investment. What we build isn't the things, Deshaun. It's the people we choose to be when things fall apart. I was about to decide who I was going to be, because Terrell made one fundamental mistake. He forgot that the man who built that house with his own hands also knew exactly how to tear down walls. The next few days were about survival and strategy. Big Lou gave me work at the restaurant, simple tasks my weakened body could handle. Clearing tables, washing dishes, organizing the storage room. He paid me more than the job was worth, and we both knew it. But my pride was already so bruised that I accepted without protest. I needed to eat. I needed medicine. And I needed time. Time to think, time to remember, time to plan. A week after I left the hospital, Terrell showed up at the restaurant. I saw him through the kitchen window, pulling up in a brand-new Cadillac Escalade. He definitely wasn't driving that before my coma. Big Lou told me you were here, he said when he walked in, looking around with something that might have been shame. We need to talk. We got nothing to talk about, I replied without looking at him, continuing to wipe down glasses. Pops, please. I know you're angry? I set the glass down harder than I meant to. You think I'm angry? Terrell, you stole my life. My house, my dignity. I didn't steal anything. Legally, forget legality. My voice echoed through the empty restaurant. Big Lou stuck his head out, worried, but I waved him off. I was in a coma, not dead. I was gonna wake up. Doctors never said it was impossible. Terrell ran his hands over his face, a gesture he'd made since he was a kid when he was nervous. For a second, I saw the boy I raised. But only for a second. The expenses were massive, Pops. The hospital, treatments, therapy. My company cut my insurance. Jasmine was stressed out. Her uncle lost everything. I had to. You had to what? Sell your father for convenience? I didn't sell you. I made tough choices in tough circumstances. And the 4,000? I asked suddenly. The money the community raised for my medical expenses. Where is it? Terrell went pale. Those went toward related expenses. For your new Escalade? For the renovations on my house that your uncle's living in now? We needed transportation to visit you when you woke up. But you didn't transport me, did you? You let me walk out of that hospital like I was homeless. The silence between us stretched like a canyon. I came to offer you something, Terrell finally said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. $700 a month. It's what I can manage, so you can rent something decent. Get settled. Jasmine and I talked it over. Jasmine and you talked it over. I laughed without humor. How generous. And what about the rest of my money? My bank accounts, my savings? They went toward medical bills. I told you. Lie. The word dropped between us like a stone. I talked to the hospital. Insurance covered 75%. My out-of-pocket expenses were less than $12,000. I had $52,000 in the bank, Terrell. Where's the other $40,000? My son couldn't hold my gaze. There were other expenses. Legal fees, administrative lawyers to steal my house while I was unconscious. It wasn't stealing. I signed as your legal representative. The whole procedure was, you know what the worst part is, Terrell? I interrupted, my voice dropping to a painful whisper. It's not the money. It's not even the house. It's that you had 10 months to sell me out. 10 months where you could have waited, could have had faith. But you gave me 4. 4 months before you erased me from my own life. The doctor said? I don't give a damn what the doctor said. I slammed the counter. I was your father. You were supposed to wait. You were supposed to believe. Terrell stepped back like I'd physically hit him. For a moment, I saw tears in his eyes, and part of me, that stupid fatherly part that never truly dies, wanted to comfort him. But then he spoke. If you had died, everything would have been easier. The silence after those words was absolute. Even the hum from the street seemed to stop. What did you say? I whispered. Terrell realized what came out of his mouth. Horror filled his face. No, I didn't mean that. Pops, get out. My voice was pure ice. Pops, please, get out before I do something we both regret. Terrell left the envelope with the money on the counter and rushed out, nearly tripping in his hurry. I watched through the window as he stood by his Escalade, hands on his head, clearly upset. But he didn't come back. He just got in his car and drove away. Big Lou came out of the kitchen, his eyes red. I heard everything, he admitted. Deshaun, I'm so sorry. I took the envelope and opened it. $700. Less than what I used to spend maintaining the house in a month. A handout. A handout from my own son. That night, alone in my basement room, I pulled out a box I'd recovered from the hospital, my personal belongings. Among them, I found my old wallet, and inside, wrinkled and forgotten, was a business card I'd saved years ago. Patricia Washington, attorney at law, specializing in family and estate law. Patricia had been a student of Latoya's. She'd come to the funeral and offered her help if I ever needed it. I'd never called, never needed legal help until now. I dialed the number from the old phone Big Lou lent me. She answered on the second ring. Patricia Washington speaking. Patricia, this is Deshaun Mitchell, Latoya's husband. I don't know if you remember me, but Deshaun. Of course I remember you. I heard about the coma. Are you okay? I told her everything. Every detail, every betrayal. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Deshaun, Patricia finally said, her voice serious. What you're describing is potentially fraud, abuse of power of attorney, and embezzlement. If I can prove even half of what you're telling me, Terrell and Jasmine could face criminal charges. I don't want revenge, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. I just want justice. I want back what's mine. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring any documents you have. And Deshaun, this is going to be a long, ugly fight. Are you sure you want to go through with this? He's your son. I thought about Terrell's words. If you had died, everything would have been easier. He was my son, I corrected. The man who came into that restaurant today is a stranger wearing his face. Yes, Patricia. I'm sure. After hanging up, I stared at the card in my trembling hands. The next day, while getting ready to head to Patricia's office, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, this is Angela Coleman. I'm a notary public. I need to speak with you urgently about some documents your son presented 8 months ago. My heart raced. What kind of documents? I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Can you come to my office this afternoon? It's important. Very important. There was something in her voice, an urgency mixed with discomfort that put me on alert. I'll be there. I promised. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the small cracked mirror in the basement. The man looking back was thinner, older, marked by suffering. But his eyes burned with something that had been asleep for months. Determination. Terrell thought he'd beaten me. Thought a weak old man fresh out of a coma would give up without a fight. But he forgot something fundamental. He forgot that men who build houses with their own hands know exactly where the foundations are, and exactly how to make them crumble. Angela Coleman's office was downtown in an old building with that characteristic smell of aged paper and polished wood that all legal offices have. I was shown in immediately, which was unusual. The notary was a woman in her 50s, hair pulled back in a tight bun, glasses perched on her nose. But what struck me most was her expression, a mix of relief and guilt when she saw me walk in. Mr. Mitchell. She stood to shake my hand. Thank you for coming so quickly. Please, sit down. Would you like some water? I just want to know why you called me. Angela nodded, adjusting her glasses nervously. She sat and opened a thick folder in front of her. 8 months ago, your son Terrell came to my office with 2 medical certificates signed by doctors from Rush University Medical Center. The certificates stated you were in a persistent vegetative state with no realistic possibility of recovery. I felt my blood boil. I was never in a vegetative state. I was in a medically induced coma with an uncertain prognosis. I know, she said quietly. I know that now. But at the time, with those certificates in my hands, signed by certified doctors, I had no reason to doubt them. Terrell filed for total power of attorney over your assets, arguing permanent incapacity. And you gave it to him. Yes? The word dropped like a stone. I authorized it. But there's more, Mr. Mitchell. Much more. And that's why I called you. Angela pulled another document from the folder, her hands shaking slightly. 4 days after obtaining power of attorney, Terrell came back, this time with his wife, Jasmine. They presented property transfer documents for your house to Jasmine's uncle. The declared sale price was $95,000. $95,000? I stood abruptly from the chair. That house is worth over $350,000. Exactly, Angela said, her voice firm now. And that seemed strange to me. Very strange. But Terrell argued he needed quick cash for your medical expenses. That Jasmine's uncle was the only one willing to buy immediately. That it was a family sale with special conditions. And you believed him. Angela took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Mr. Mitchell, I process dozens of transactions monthly. Some are suspicious, yes. But if all the papers are in order, I can't refuse to certify them without concrete proof of fraud. And Terrell presented all necessary documents, the power of attorney, the medical certificates, even a letter supposedly from you, written before the coma, expressing your wish for Terrell to handle your affairs if anything happened to you. I never wrote that letter. I realized that when I saw the news. She turned her computer toward me. On the screen was a local news article from 5 days ago. Chicago miracle. Man wakes after 10 months in coma. My photo was there, taken by some journalist at the hospital without me knowing. When I saw this, when I read you'd woken up and your prognosis was never a permanent vegetative state, I knew something was terribly wrong, Angela explained. I started investigating. I contacted Rush University Medical Center. You know what I found? I shook my head, my heart pounding wildly. The medical certificates Terrell presented were forged. Well, not completely forged. The doctors whose signatures appear do exist. They worked at that hospital, but the signatures were fake. The hospital never issued those documents. The room seemed to spin around me. Terrell forged medical documents. So it appears. And there's more. Angela pulled out another paper. When Jasmine's uncle bought the house for $95,000, the money never reached any account related to you, not even the accounts Terrell controlled under power of attorney. The money simply disappeared, or more likely, it never existed. It was a sham sale. Why are you telling me all this? I asked, trying to process the magnitude of what I was hearing. You certified those documents. You're part of this. Angela looked me straight in the eyes. Because I was deceived, Mr. Mitchell, because I've been a notary for 28 years and have never knowingly participated in fraud. And because when I saw your photo in the paper, when I read you were alive and conscious, I couldn't sleep for 4 nights. She stood and walked to the window, her back to me. My mother had a stroke 12 years ago. She was in a coma for 7 months. My whole family lost hope, except me. I believed, and she woke up. She lived 6 more wonderful years after that. When I saw your case, Mr. Mitchell, when I saw your son had abandoned you so quickly, so completely, her voice broke. I couldn't stay silent. What exactly are you saying? Angela turned back to me, and in her eyes I saw determination. I'm saying I have copies of all the documents Terrell presented. The forged signatures, the record showing the money from the supposed sale was never transferred. Everything. And I'm willing to testify. Mr. Mitchell, I'm willing to admit my mistake in not investigating deeper and to help you undo this fraud. This could ruin your career. Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. And because I'm not going to be an accomplice to a son who betrays his father this way. My conscience is worth more than my career. She handed me a thick folder. This is everything. Copies of it all. Take it to your lawyer. There's enough here to nullify every transaction, get your house back, and likely prosecute Terrell and Jasmine for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. I took the folder with trembling hands. It was heavy, solid, real. Does Jasmine's uncle know? I asked, but Angela shook her head. I don't think so. I spoke with him briefly last week, running into him at a coffee shop. He seems to genuinely believe he bought the house legally. He's a victim as much as you are, Mr. Mitchell. Terrell used him. I left that office in a state of shock. I walked aimlessly for hours, the folder pressed against my chest like treasure. Terrell hadn't just betrayed me. He'd committed fraud, forged documents, lied to his own uncle-in-law, and built an elaborate castle of lies that had fooled even an experienced notary. But castles of lies, no matter how elaborate, always have one fundamental weakness. They're built on air, and I was about to be the wind that knocked them down. I arrived at Big Lou's restaurant just as it was getting dark. He was closing up, but let me in when he saw my face. Deshawn, what happened? I couldn't speak. I just handed him the folder. Big Lou opened it and started reading. With every page, his expression went from shock to horror to fury. This is criminal, he finally whispered. Deshawn, with this you can get everything back. You can send him to prison. I know. And what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Terrell was a criminal. He'd stolen from me, forged documents, wished for my death. But he was also my son, the boy who handed me bricks while I built our house, the young man who cried at his mother's funeral, the man who once told me, I need you, Pops. I'm going to do what I have to do, I finally said. But first, I'm going to give him a chance he never gave me. What chance? The chance to tell the truth. The chance to explain himself. The chance to repent. Big Lou looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Deshawn, he doesn't deserve. He probably doesn't, I interrupted. But I'm not him. I'm not going to become the monster he turned into. I'm going to do things the right way. I'm going to give him one last chance to be the man I raised. And if he rejects it, I looked at the folder on the table, solid, incontrovertible evidence of my son's betrayal. Then may God help him, because I won't. I called Terrell that same night. Pops, he answered, evident surprise in his voice. I thought you didn't want anything to do with me. I need you to come to Big Lou's restaurant tomorrow at 7 in the evening. You and Jasmine. I don't know if Jasmine will want to. It's not an invitation, Terrell. It's an order. If you're not here tomorrow at 7, what I have to tell you, you'll hear from the district attorney. Silence. Then, in a cautious voice, what are you talking about? 7 tomorrow. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I didn't sleep. I spent the hours going over the documents, memorizing every detail, preparing for what was coming. Patricia, my lawyer, had wanted to be present, but I asked her to wait outside, ready to come in if I needed her. This was something I needed to do alone, Dot, at exactly 7 the next evening. Terrell and Jasmine walked into the restaurant. Big Lou had closed early to give us privacy. It was just the three of us, and the truth waiting to be revealed. Terrell looked nervous. Jasmine looked defiant. What's so urgent, Deshawn? Jasmine asked, using my first name as always, refusing to call me anything familiar. Sit down, I said. My voice was calm in a way that clearly unsettled them. They sat across from me. I placed the folder on the table between us. 3 days ago, I visited Notary Angela Coleman, I began. Remember her? I saw the blood drain from Terrell's face. Pops, I can explain. Silence. My voice cut like a knife. You've lied enough. Now you're going to listen. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Forged medical certificates declaring me in a permanent vegetative state when I never was. The doctor's signatures are fake. The hospital has records of it. That's forgery of official documents, Terrell. A felony. I didn't know, Terrell started, but Jasmine put a hand on his arm, whispering to him, "Don't say anything." "Oh no, Jasmine," I said, looking directly at her. "Let him talk. Let him explain how he didn't know he was using forged documents to rob his father." I pulled out another document. Power of attorney obtained through fraud. Property transfer from my house for $95,000, a quarter of its real value, to your uncle. But here's the interesting part. Terrell, the money was never transferred. There was never a real sale. It was all a sham to give my house to Jasmine's family without it looking like a gift. You know what that's called? Real estate fraud. The uncle needed help, Jasmine said, her voice rising. He'd lost everything. He was desperate. And that justifies stealing from me? I looked at her incredulously. Your family needed help, so you decided to take mine. You were in a coma, Jasmine shot back. The doctors never said I wouldn't wake up. They said it was uncertain. But uncertain wasn't convenient for you, was it? You needed me to be a lost cause. You needed me to be a vegetable to justify what you were planning. I pulled out more documents. 42,000 of my savings gone. Terrell says it went toward medical expenses, but the hospital has records showing only 11,000 was paid out of pocket. Where's the other 31,000, Terrell? My son couldn't look me in the eye. And then there's the 4,000 the community raised for me. Money that never reached the hospital. Where is that money, son? It helped with other expenses, Terrell muttered. Like your new Escalade? My voice rose. Like the renovations your uncle did on my house? Like the vacation Jasmine posted about on Instagram 5 months ago while I was fighting for my life? Jasmine went pale. How do you know about that? Because people in this community talk, Jasmine. Because people who know me, who care about me, have been telling me things. Things about how you two celebrated when the doctor said my prognosis was poor. Things about how Jasmine told her aunt they'd finally have financial freedom. Things about how Terrell raised a glass the day he signed the papers for the house. That's not true. Terrell shouted, standing up. I never celebrated. I was devastated. Devastated? I laughed bitterly. So devastated you waited only 4 months before erasing me from my own life. So devastated you forged medical documents. So devastated you told me in this very restaurant that everything would have been easier if I had died. Terrell collapsed into the chair, his face in his hands. Pops, Things got out of control. Jasmine and I had debts. Her uncle was about to be evicted. The bank was pressuring us. I thought you wouldn't wake up, and all that money would just be wasted on hospital bills while I was. While I was what, Terrell? While I was slowly dying? While my body was fighting to come back? I wasn't thinking clearly. His voice broke. I had gambling debts I never told you about. 60,000 I owed to some dangerous people. Jasmine had a miscarriage because of the stress. Her uncle was sleeping in his car. Everything was falling apart, and you were just lying there, not moving. And I just thought, you thought it would be convenient if I disappeared. I finished for him. No, I loved you. I love you. But I was desperate. Desperation doesn't justify theft, Terrell. And it certainly doesn't justify wishing death on your own father. Jasmine finally spoke, her voice cold as ice. What do you want, Deshawn? Money? An apology? What? I looked at her, this woman who turned my son into a criminal, and I felt a strange calm wash over me. I want justice. Are you going to report us? Terrell asked, tears streaming down his face. I have 2 options, I said, looking at them both. Option 1, I take these documents to the district attorney tomorrow. You face charges for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. You likely go to prison. Your uncle loses the house he never should have had. Everything gets destroyed. And option 2? Jasmine asked, always practical. Option 2. You have 72 hours to undo every single lie. You return the house to my name. You return every cent of my money. You confess everything to your uncle and help him find another place to live. And after that, I paused. After that, I never want to see either of you again. Terrell sobbed. Pops, please. I'm not your Pops, I said, the words hurting even as I spoke them. A father is someone you trust, someone who protects you. You gave up that title when you signed those forged papers. We can't return everything in 72 hours, Jasmine said. Some of the money's already spent. Then get loans. Sell the Escalade. Sell whatever you have to sell. Or don't, and explain to a judge why you can't. I stood, taking the folder. You have until Saturday at 7 in the evening. 1 minute later, and these documents go to the district attorney. I walked toward the door and stopped. Terrell, I said, without turning around. When I built that house, every brick I laid was for you. Every extra hour I worked was thinking about your future. I gave you everything, and you gave me betrayal. I'm sorry, he whispered. Pops, I'm so sorry. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't give back 10 months of my life. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. I opened the door. Don't ever call me Pops again. You haven't earned that right anymore. I walked out into the cool Chicago night, leaving my son's sobs behind. And for the first time in months, I breathed free. On Saturday, at 6:45 in the evening, Terrell showed up at the restaurant. He came alone. He brought a box of documents and a bank envelope. Everything's here, he said, his voice hollow. Transfer papers for the house back to your name signed and notarized. The money? We got loans. Sold the Escalade, Jasmine's jewelry, some furniture. There's $45,000. It's all we could gather. It's enough, I said, taking the envelope without looking at him. Uncle Ray moved out yesterday. We got him an apartment on the west side. He doesn't know the whole truth, just that there were legal complications with the property. He's furious with us, but he's safe. I nodded. At least that? Terrell stood there like a child, waiting to be punished or forgiven. But I wasn't his father anymore. I was simply a man who'd been betrayed. Anything else? I asked. I wanted you to know Jasmine and I are separating. She says this is all my fault, that I dragged her into this. Maybe she's right. He laughed bitterly. I lost my wife. I lost my father. All because I was a desperate coward. You were a thief, I corrected. A thief who stole from his own father. Desperation can explain a lot of things, Terrell, but it doesn't justify betrayal. I know. Tears ran down his face. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I looked at him, this man who used to be my son, and searched inside myself for the answer. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. Maybe years from now. But not today. Today, I can only tell you that I'm letting you go. I'm not going to pursue you legally. I'm not going to ruin you any more than you've already ruined yourself. But I'm also not going to pretend we're family. So this is goodbye. This is what it needs to be. Terrell nodded, wiping his tears. For what it's worth, Deshaun, I'm sorry. I did love you. I still love you. It's just that I loved my convenience more. And that makes me a monster. It makes you human, I said, surprising myself with my own words. A human who made terrible decisions. But human nonetheless. He left without saying anything else. I haven't seen him since. 3 weeks later, I moved back into my house. Uncle Ray had made changes, yes, but nothing that couldn't be undone. I hired a gardener who helped me plant new roses where Latoya's used to be. They weren't the same. They never would be. But it was a start. Big Lou came over to help me clean and organize. He brought food, music, and that unshakable friendship that had sustained me through my darkest moments. "How you feeling?" he asked as we drank coffee in my kitchen, for the first time in almost a year. "Empty," I admitted, "and full at the same time. Empty because I lost my son. Full because I got my dignity back. You think he'll change?" "I hope so, for his own sake. But he's not my responsibility to save anymore. I've fulfilled my role as a father. Now he has to decide what kind of man he wants to be." Patricia, my lawyer, had been impressed with how everything resolved. "I've never seen anything like it," she told me when we signed the final papers. "You had enough to destroy him completely. Most people in your position would have gone straight to the DA. Most people didn't raise the criminal," I replied. "It's different when the betrayal comes from your own blood. I didn't want revenge, Patricia. I just wanted justice. And I got it. The neighbors found out, of course. In a tight community, secrets don't last long. Some came to show support, others with gossip and morbid curiosity. But most came simply to welcome me home." "We knew something wasn't right," Mr. Jackson told me, my neighbor of 35 years. "Terrell sold your house way too fast. But we didn't want to get involved in family business." "I understand," I said. And I did. Family is complicated. Love is complicated. And forgiveness is the most complicated thing of all. 7 months have passed since then. My body has recovered surprisingly well. Physical therapy, proper diet, and the simple fact of having a purpose gave me back strength the doctors didn't think I'd recover. I work part-time at Big Lou's restaurant now. Not because I need the money, but because I need the company. Because I learned during those 10 months of darkness and the weeks of betrayal that followed that what makes us human isn't the houses we build or the money we accumulate. It's the connections we form. It's the people who hold us up when we fall. It's the dignity we maintain even when people try to steal it from us. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from Terrell. I haven't opened it. It's sitting on my desk, waiting. Someday I'll have the courage to read it. Someday I'll be able to face his words without my heart breaking all over again. But not today. Today, I'm just sitting on the porch I built with my own hands, looking at the roses I planted in memory of Latoya. And I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have woken up. I'm grateful to have had the strength to fight for what was mine. And I'm grateful to have learned that forgiveness isn't something you give to someone because they deserve it. It's something you give to yourself so you can move on. If you're listening to this and you've gone through similar betrayals, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Family sometimes fails us in ways we never imagined possible. The people we love sometimes betray us. And that hurts in a way no other wound can. But I also want you to know that you can survive. You can recover. You can rebuild. I did it. I woke up after 10 months in a coma to find I'd lost everything. And yet, here I am, standing tall with dignity in my house, living my life. Terrell stole 10 months, my house and my money. But he couldn't steal the most important thing. He couldn't steal who I am. And in the end, that's what mattered most. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, two of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.